This special presentation of the Oprah Winfrey Show is brought to you with limited commercial interruption. It is supported in part by the new AT&T, committed to education.
I'm here in Poland at the Auschwitz death camp, where it's estimated that 1.1 to 1.5 million people perished here in the Holocaust, most of them Eastern European Jews. It is here, right here, on this track, railroad track, leading into the camp, that a young teenage boy arrived in a cattle car with his family, friends, and neighbors in 1944. That young boy, Elie Wiesel, lived to bear witness to the evil of man. That evil has a name: the Holocaust. A systematic mass murder meticulously planned and executed by Nazi Germany that brutally wiped millions of people off the face of the earth. More than 6 million of those human beings were Jewish. It was 1939, and the Great Depression had left Germany desperate. Adolf Hitler seized the moment, promising riches to those he dubbed the master race, Aryans of pure German blood. September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. World War II was underway. On the order of Nazi command, Jewish families from across Europe were forced from their homes and sent to concentration camps. Thousands of these camps had sprung up throughout Eastern Europe. They were run by Hitler's private army known as the SS. In a small Polish town stood one of the most notorious camps, Auschwitz, a massive complex spanning 6,720 acres of land. That is larger than 5,000 football fields, almost half the size of Manhattan. Auschwitz consisted of 3 large sub-camps: Birkenau, the point of arrival, and main death factory, Auschwitz I, the torture center, and Buna, the work camp. It was 1945, and the war was nearly over, with Germany in defeat. When American and Russian troops finally liberated the remaining camps, all they found left behind were the dead and the walking dead. Prisoner A7713 from Szeged, Hungary, Elie Wiesel, was just 15 years old when he was sent to Auschwitz. Years later, he would write his first-hand account in what has become one of the single most important books of our time, Night. Now a Nobel Peace Prize winner, prolific author, professor, world-renowned humanitarian, and Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel returns to Auschwitz to meet me and walk these hallowed grounds. When here, you will notice the professor speaks very softly, allowing the silence to have its space. And as we walk, the memories seem to come in waves as he recalls that first night in 1944 at Auschwitz.
What a place.
Yeah, what a place, what a place. What is it even coming back now? Difficult?
Each time I come, I try not to speak for a day or 2 or 3. And just to go back and find the silence that was in me then. And I say to myself, how many of us did not live and simply vanished? Look at this place. The immensity of the place. It's a universe. And when you think of the numbers, 1 million, 1.5 million people, just think country or a city that has 1.5 million inhabitants and simply vanishes. And so I think of that. I come here and try to see the invisible and try to hear the inaudible. And I always see what I had seen the last time I was here.
Do you think that the ground it carries its own energy here? It has the voices of the dead, do you think?
Absolutely. I'm convinced of that. That some voices are still here. I think the souls are here. I think that they listen, they cry, they warn. Look, this is the largest cemetery in recorded history. And what do you see? Nothing.
Nothing.
But the cemetery is in our heart.
Yes, it's huge.
Huge.
I am stunned at the vastness of it. It's huge.
It was meant to be huge in order to receive so many millions of people.
Yeah.
I remember the first impression I had when we came was at night, midnight, and it was with all the lights on, projectors, dogs, shepherds, German shepherds, SS with machine guns, but the vastness
Of it.
the vastness of the whole place.
Yes.
And we didn't know. That's the main thing. We had no idea what Auschwitz was. We never heard the word Auschwitz. Nobody knew what it meant. Look, had we known, we would have run into the forest.
In May of 1944, exterminating the Jewish race remained Hitler's top priority. The number of trains to the death camps multiplied. These human shipments were brutally inhumane. Up to 100 people packed into a single cattle car. No food, no water, no toilet, little air. Some trips lasted up to 10 terrifying days. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel remembers his own journey in his book, Night.
There was a woman among us, a certain Mrs. Schechter. I knew her well. Mrs. Schechter had lost her mind. On the first day of our journey, she had already begun to moan. Later, her sobs and screams became hysterical. Fire! I see a fire. Some pressed against the bars to see. There was nothing, only the darkness of night. She's mad, poor woman.
But days later, as young Elie stepped off the cattle car here at Birkenau, he would smell the stench of burning human flesh.
There were fires. The crematorium was throwing its flames in the sky. I thought first of all of Mrs. Schechter.
Mrs. Schechter, who was on the saw the fire. But the screaming, the screaming, the screaming. She wasn't so mad at all. She was a prophet.
And we didn't listen. Why, very strange. I think maybe it's the end of history.
Maybe it's the end of history.
And I thought maybe it's the end of Jewish history. And then I thought maybe that means the end of times.
So this is about where you arrived, right?
We arrived here. That was the ramp, yeah.
Where the platform was. And what did you think or imagine?
Nothing. But just that there was, you saw the extraordinary horror of people with machine guns starting to shout. Literally, a minute later, saying, first of all, families together, then men alone. We didn't have time to say goodbye to each other.
The systematic process of determining who would live and who would die was known as selection. The maniacal Dr. Mengele and SS officers briefly sized up each new arrival. Those deemed capable of hard labor, like 15-year-old Elie and his father, went into the camp. The others were sent immediately and unknowingly down the path to the gas chambers.
Men to the left, women to the right, 8 words spoken quietly, indifferently, without emotion. 8 simple, short words. Yet, that was the moment I left my mother. I didn't know that this was the moment in time and the place where I was leaving my mother and Sipora forever.
Where were you separated from your little sister and your mother?
There, I think there, yeah. And my sisters, with the 2 older sisters, my grandmother, and my little sister, I remember her because she had a red coat that she got for holiday.
A little red coat?
Yeah. And that's when I saw them disappear all of a sudden. They went left, they went right. Yes. They went to the crematorium. That was the crematorium.
That was the crematorium.
Yeah, yeah. But we had no idea. No idea. Even afterwards, we had no idea. When some inmates said to us, you see, we said, "Our families." They looked and they said, "The flames." We still had no idea. First times it was human to be inhuman. I have seen so many things in my life. I still don't grasp it. It must have some meaning. What does it mean? That evil can triumph, we knew that. That humiliation exists, we knew that. But of this, it was a scandal on the level of creation.
I know. I have no answers, and all these many years later, you still have no answers.
I have no answers.
No answers.
No, I have certain indications that suffering doesn't give any privilege.
Yes.
That's and if I have moral philosophies, I don't think I should accept other people's suffering because I suffer. Just the opposite. Because I suffer, I don't want others to suffer. But this is not an answer.
No.
Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp that turned my life into one long night. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never.
The Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland is the site of the largest mass murder in the history of mankind. A literal factory of death. In the beginning, prisoners here were executed, starved, or worked to death. Soon, a faster method of execution evolved. Gas chambers. Now able to murder thousands of people at a time, the Nazis had perfected the science of killing. By 1944, an average of 8,600 Hungarian Jews were being deported to Auschwitz in cattle cars each day. 15-year-old Elie Wiesel and his family were among them. Auschwitz was divided into 3 main camps. The largest was Auschwitz II, also known as Birkenau, which housed 4 gas chambers. Those selected to die had no idea of their fate. They were told they were getting showers. Once naked, mothers, their babies, children, the elderly, and anyone else deemed unfit to work were packed into the gas chambers by the thousands. Canisters of the deadly chemical Zyklon B were dropped down ventilated columns into the chambers. As the toxic pellets mixed with air, cyanide gas was released. Death took about 15 minutes to come and felt like suffocation. Proud of their efficiency and precision, SS officers witnessed the gassing as it happened through special peepholes. The grisly task of burning the dead bodies was left to other Jewish prisoners known as Sonderkommandos, a German term meaning special unit. Prisoners forced into these horrific jobs temporarily evaded their own death. As bodies piled up by the thousands, they were loaded onto elevators, then lowered underground into the ovens. When the ovens were filled to capacity, bodies were burned in open pits. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel witnessed these atrocities as a boy and gave the world his account in the book Night.
I pinched myself. Was I still alive? Was I awake? How was it possible that men, women and children were being burned and that the world kept silent? No, all of this could not be real. A nightmare, perhaps.
Professor Wiesel and I walked to the site of crematorium number 3. It is likely that his own mother and younger sister, Zipporah, were murdered inside, then reduced to ashes. The building now lies in ruins, destroyed by the Nazis on the eve of liberation in a vain attempt to hide the evidence of their atrocities.
What we realized here is that nothing mattered. Fame mattered nothing. Titles mattered nothing. Positions or possessions, nothing.
Yes, because the first night that you were brought here, everybody was taken, stripped.
Those who survived.
Those who survived, yes.
The way it was done, First, we were deprived of our address, then of our citizenship, then of our home, then of our family, then of our name, and then of our life. Most times it was human to being human. I have seen so many things in my life. I still don't grasp it. It must have some meaning, doesn't it? That evil can triumph, we knew that. That humiliation exists, we knew that. But of this, it was a scandal on the level of creation.
I know. I have no answers, and all these many years later, you still have no answers.
I have no answers.
No answers.
No, I have certain indications that suffering doesn't give any privilege.
Yes.
That's and if I have moral philosophy, I don't think I should accept other people's suffering because I suffer. It's just the opposite. Because I suffer, I don't want others to suffer. But this is not an answer.
No.
Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp that turned my life into one long night. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never.
The Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland is the site of the largest mass murder in the history of mankind. A literal factory of death. In the beginning, prisoners here were executed, starved, or worked to death. Soon, a faster method of execution evolved. Gas chambers. Now able to murder thousands of people at a time, the Nazis had perfected the science of killing. By 1944, an average of 8,600 Hungarian Jews were being deported to Auschwitz in cattle cars each day. 15-year-old Elie Wiesel and his family were among them. Auschwitz was divided into 3 main camps. The largest was Auschwitz II, also known as Birkenau, which housed 4 gas chambers. Those selected to die had no idea of their fate. They were told they were getting showers. Once naked, mothers, their babies, children, the elderly, and anyone else deemed unfit to work were packed into the gas chambers by the thousands. Canisters of the deadly chemical Zyklon B were dropped down ventilated columns into the chambers. As the toxic pellets mixed with air, cyanide gas was released. Death took about 15 minutes to come and felt like suffocation. Proud of their efficiency and precision, SS officers witnessed the gassing as it happened through special peepholes. The grisly task of burning the dead bodies was left to other Jewish prisoners known as Sonderkommandos, a German term meaning special unit. Prisoners forced into these horrific jobs temporarily evaded their own death. As bodies piled up by the thousands, they were loaded onto elevators, then lowered underground into the ovens. When the ovens were filled to capacity, bodies were burned in open pits. Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel witnessed these atrocities as a boy and gave the world his account in the book Night.
I pinched myself. Was I still alive? Was I awake? How was it possible that men, women and children were being burned and that the world kept silent? No, all of this could not be real. A nightmare, perhaps.
Professor Wiesel and I walked to the site of crematorium number 3. It is likely that his own mother and younger sister, Zipporah, were murdered inside, then reduced to ashes. The building now lies in ruins, destroyed by the Nazis on the eve of liberation in a vain attempt to hide the evidence of their atrocities.
What we realized here is that nothing mattered. Fame, matter nothing. Titles matter nothing.
Positions.
Positions or possessions, nothing.
Yes, because the first night that you were brought here, everybody was taken, stripped.
Those who survived.
Those who survived, yes.
The way it was done. First, we were deprived of our address, then of our citizenship, then of our home, then of our family, then of our name, and then of our life.
Walking fast, running, always moving.
I don't remember myself walking, just running. When they order you something, you had to run. A slave runs.
A slave runs.
And we were the exemplary slaves. Therefore, you had to run.
It's unimaginable.
But you know, I have published by now 47 books. Do you know, I believe often that I haven't even begun.
Really?
Yeah. And I feel it here more than ever.
In Birkenau?
Yeah. I haven't even begun. But I have the feeling I didn't do enough, you know, it's more here.
Oh, my goodness. It is your quiet forcefulness that has kept the truth alive in a way. You know, that book inspired me, so now I tell the story. It keeps the memory alive.
We marched. Gates opened and closed. We continued to march between the barbed wire. At every step, white signs with black skulls looked down on us. The inscription, warning, danger of death. What irony. Was there here a single place where one was not in danger of death?
It was May of 1944. Young Elie Wiesel and his father had not been sent to the gas chamber at Birkenau and were moved to another section of the concentration camp. Auschwitz I, SS headquarters, and torture center. Today, over 60 years later, these grounds stand as a memorial and house a museum of relics. Visitors from every corner of the world come here to bear witness and pay their respects. Arbeit macht frei.
Which means work makes you free. And that is the first ironic statement ever made here.
This Iron Gate is one of the most infamous symbols of evil still standing. Yet as you pass through it, there is a feeling of sacredness, haunting memory, something achingly sad and holy.
There's so much suffering here in this place, so much agony. How grateful I should be that I'm here. Yeah. And look, that you and I are here walking, remembering, helping, thinking of what to do with our lives, with our memories. That's what I'm teaching.
Yeah. Were these trees here, do you remember?
There were trees, yes.
There were trees.
But we didn't look.
We didn't.
No, I didn't look at trees.
You didn't look. No. So that is where you were?
17 years.
Block 17.
Yes, 17. From Birkenau we came here.
Yeah. Have you been inside since?
Not since, no.
No?
No.
It is just a miracle. It feels like a miracle that you did survive.
Believe me, Oprah, I can't understand it either. I was the wrong person for that. I was always timid, frightened, bashful. I have never taken any initiative to live. I never pushed myself, nothing. Never volunteered. I was the wrong person. I was always sick when I was a child.
And then you got here?
I got here. And if I survived this place until Buchenwald, because my father was alive. And I knew that if I die, he would die.
Yeah. So you stayed alive for him?
I woke up at dawn. On my father's cot there lay another sick person. They must have taken him away before daybreak and taken him to the crematorium. Perhaps he was still breathing. No prayers were said over his tomb, no candle lit in his memory. His last word had been my name.
That was, yeah. January 28th, 1945.
Right, 45.
61 years ago. And so, was there ever a sense of normalcy? Not normal.
No, cannot be.
Not normalcy.
And your life.
I don't even mean normalcy. I just mean that you adjust to the madness. You adjusted to the madness.
That you had to do it immediately. We adjusted not only to madness, we adjusted to death. It's not that we lived with the dead. You know, you went to sleep in the morning, somebody was at your side, was dead. It's not it. We lived inside death.
I see.
After the war, the most difficult thing was to adjust, not to life, but to death.
To death.
Afterwards. Because here, death was the norm. Outside, life is the norm. And afterwards, to adjust that whenever somebody dies, you cry. That was a new thing in my life. Here, people died and you didn't cry.
Because the people were dying constantly.
Constantly. And the second also, you were afraid if you start crying, you wouldn't stop.
I understand.
So
that.
people didn't cry.
It was here at Auschwitz I that the notorious Dr. Joseph Mengele, known as the Angel of Death, conducted sadistic medical experiments on prisoners, infecting them with diseases, rubbing chemicals into their skin, and performing crude sterilization experiments in his quest to eliminate the Jewish race by any means possible. In Block 11, the secret German police, the Gestapo, interrogated and tortured political prisoners and anyone who dared to disobey. Thousands were shot and killed in this spot.
This is Block 11. And Block 11 was the prison inside prison. So this was the execution place for political prisoners, mainly. Those who tried to escape and so forth.
So this
and this
wall?
one, that wall there.
So many people were executed right here?
Yes. But you know, but at least they had individual deaths.
Oh, yes. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
That even that
Even
becomes
that, yeah. The privilege.
privilege. I can't imagine the terror. I can't imagine the terror.
But here actually that was a release because it followed torture.
Was it?
Block 11 was torture.
We'll be back with more of this special hour.
In the deep of winter, much like the one he barely survived in 1944, Professor Elie Wiesel and I have come to the Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland. Nearly 1.5 million people, mostly European Jews, were murdered in this death factory alone. 61 years later, evidence of these crimes against humanity are preserved behind a wall of glass. Can you explain to us what these are? These are cans. These are cans.
It's called Cyclone B cans with gas. And they used, before the war, usually they used it to kill insects. Then they tried it on Russian war prisoners and Polish war prisoners, some 800 of them. And then they decided to use it against the Jews. And when the gas chambers were full, an assessment put on a gas mask, went to the roof, opened a little window there, and threw such a can into the gas chamber. Unspeakable pain and horror. But that's how they were killed. Mothers and children hugging. Yeah. And that's how it became industrialized. The death factory became industrialized, and the industry worked well.
In another room, Professor Wiesel shows me another haunting sight. Before they were murdered en masse, the Jews had been told they would be resettled in Eastern Europe. The families arrived in Auschwitz with their most treasured possessions packed into suitcases. On the outside of each case, the unsuspecting owners wrote their names and dates of birth, believing their things would be returned.
You talk about a life inside the suitcases.
Exactly. Look, here there are rich suitcases and poor suitcases.
In another room, Professor Wiesel shows me another haunting sight. Before they were murdered en masse, the Jews had been told they would be resettled in Eastern Europe. The families arrived in Auschwitz with their most treasured possessions packed into suitcases. On the outside of each case, the unsuspecting owners wrote their names and dates of birth, believing their things would be returned.
You talk about a life inside the suitcases.
Exactly. Look, here there are rich suitcases and poor suitcases, old suitcases, new suitcases.
But in
ended.
one night, everybody became one. You said yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they all came here. They all ended here. That was the end.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah. So his name was Peter Eisler. He was born in 1942. And he had a suitcase for himself. When you see these suitcases, if you think of what they contain, there is an urge on you to curse, to be angry, and say, come on, but you must be angry at those who committed these crimes, and that there must be a way of healing.
What did you do with your anger?
The anger here is in me, hate not. I'm against hatred. I write and I teach. And my goal is, in both cases, to sensitize the reader or the student. And what does one feel when one is here looking? One feels that those who committed these crimes had no feeling.
Yes. That was a different kind of human being that could do this. I don't know what
but
that
they
is.
were human. They had two eyes.
Yeah.
They had love for their families. They loved music and culture and paintings. And yet, look what they have done. And therefore, I believe anger must be a catalyst. When am I angry? When I witness injustice and I feel helpless. That's when I'm angry. I'm helpless. When I went to all the places in the world, mainly children in the arms of her mother, and both are starving. And I can't do anything except use my words to shout. That's when I'm angry.
I understand. That I understand. These are all baby clothes that would have been left in those suitcases that we just saw. That is a well-done little crochet dress, yes. And so the Jewish babies were killed immediately.
They had no chance immediately.
They had no chance.
And the mothers too, because the mother would never give up her baby. Let's say a young mother without a baby could have gone to work. But a mother who stayed with the baby, both of them went to the gas chamber.
Gone.
Yeah, gone.
They didn't even know when they were coming in.
They had no idea. They had no idea.
There is some grace in that, don't you think?
I don't know. I really don't
I just
know.
think that would have been horrible, marching to your death and knowing. I mean, I saw one of the photographs where the women were waiting outside.
Yes, but at one point they knew.
But at one point they did know.
And they locked the doors of the gas chambers.
Once they got inside.
the last minutes, I don't want to know. I don't want to think about it.
I know. I think this is the hardest, actually.
The children, all the
seeing the baby's clothes,
children,
and knowing not one of them survived would be the children.
By the time Auschwitz was liberated in 1945, nearly 1.5 million people had been murdered, turned to ashes, erased. Left behind was somber evidence of Nazi war crimes. Mountains and mountains of ownerless personal items, each relic with its own story of a human being who once lived.
Isn't it so how significant a pair of shoes becomes? Because behind every shoe is life, is a person. So
elegant shoes, poor shoes. You see, these shoes could tell the stories of the lives of those who walked in them. Imagine what they would say. Yeah. And here it's just like in the camp itself, look all together. Oh, the community of shoes. The same people, you had the same block, you had people rich and poor, young and younger.
Red shoes.
Yes, red shoes, right? That's probably a dancer.
Probably a dancer.
Yeah.
So these are the baby's shoes. The children's shoes?
Yeah.
Whatever little girl would have worn those shoes, she would have loved herself in those shoes.
For the summer.
For the summer.
Just for the summer.
Little red shoes.
Look how sad these shoes are.
Yeah.
They're crying.
Yes, they are.
They simply say, look at me and cry.
It's unimaginable. It's just unimaginable.
How many Nobel Prize winners died at the age of 1, 2, and whose shoes are here?
Yes.
One of them could have discovered the remedy for cancer, for AIDS.
How many scientists, how many
The great poets, the great dreamers.
Yes, contributions to the world.
Back in a moment with more of this special presentation.
The Nazis went to sinister lengths to profit from the extermination of millions of human beings. 6 million of them Jews. No possible resource was wasted. In block number 4 at the Auschwitz concentration camp, Holocaust survivor Professor Elie Wiesel showed me the evidence that speaks for itself. No words can describe the mountains of human hair preserved for more than 60 years behind a special glass case over 67 feet long.
Well, this is just unimaginable. And the purpose of taking people's hair was what?
For industry. The first thing they did was to
shave your head.
The head. And for the corpses as well. They felt nothing should be lost from the war effort.
Human hair, shorn from the victims' scalps, was gathered and sold to German factories to make cloth. At the time of the liberation, 7 tons of hair was discovered at Auschwitz, ready to be transported for sale.
Oh my God. More and more.
More, it could go on and on and on and more.
On and on and on and on and on.
More and more.
And more. Oh my God. It's really unimaginable. It's unimaginable. You know, there are not words to describe that.
That's what I'm saying.
No, there's no words.
But they knew it. They wanted to push their crimes to the outer limit, thus depriving us of the language to describe their crimes. Because there's an ancient, marvelous ancient legend that whenever a just person dies, God sheds 2 tears. And when they fall into the ocean, they reverberate throughout the universe. And I say to myself, if God does that for one just person, because there's an ancient, marvelous ancient legend that whenever a just person dies, God sheds 2 tears. And when they fall into the ocean, they reverberate throughout the universe. And I say to myself, if God does that for one just person, how many tears did he shed for all these men and women and children, I call them the children who are just and innocent and beautiful, who heard them? Do we hear them now?
We hear them now. We hear them. You know, I've talked about this with you before, and it was 6 years ago when I interviewed you for the magazine, and we talked about the idea of coming here, and I just appreciate you taking the time to bring yourself back here for all that this means in your life, too. It cannot be easy for you to make this journey.
I wouldn't have done it with anyone.
Yeah. You were telling me this will probably be the last time?
Last time.
Last time.
Probably this last time.
Well, you know, I'm trying to make sense of it all. It doesn't, it's a lot to take in, and it just, even seeing it makes it more real, but I can't even get my brain around it.
Oh, the death of one child makes no sense.
Yes.
The death of millions, what sense could it make? Except if we are here. Now we know.
Now we know. And I think that part of the reason for knowing is to, wherever it's happening in the world, for people to know it's happening. It's happening, it's happening again.
Whenever people could try to conduct such experiments against other people, we must be there to shout and say, no, we remember.
No, we remember.